Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the June 13th, 2012 meeting of the Lowell Conservation Commission. Moving on to business, our first item on the agenda is a continuation from our prior meeting date. It's a notice of intent, Paul Mercier, concerning DEP file number 2060691. Project location is 51 and 57 Shirley Avenue, and it's construction of a single-family home in a bordering land subject to flooding, or the 100-year floodplain.
Good evening, I'm Stephen Erickson from North Environmental Services. We had originally submitted a design to DEP and to the Commission that had a flow-through foundation with tanks that would take the compensatory storage. DEP said that they will no longer approve that type of construction, so they asked us to go with piers. So we have just recently revised the plan, so I apologize for you getting it so late, but the plan has been revised. We're going to be using I-beams. The end result of that is the I-beams will displace 59 gallons of water, not very much at all, and we will have a tank in the ground that will take over 100 gallons of water. So that will provide the compensatory storage for the small amount that will be there. But the construction is relatively simple. The I-beams will be driven into the ground or sitting on a piling, concrete footing of some sort. We'll have a structural engineer who will determine the actual way to put that in. There'll be I-beams across the top, and the house will be constructed. First floor will be completely out of the floodplain. It'll be completely a flow-through type foundation.
All right, procedurally wise, Mr. Erickson, we just got these plans literally like 2 hours ago.
I understand.
Yeah, and I just my quick perusal, and we literally got the paper plans just 15 minutes ago. We had them electronically just a couple of hours ago. I've already noticed a couple of errors on the plan that need to be addressed. The conversion from to the City of Lowell datum to the base flood elevation is incorrect, as listed in your note number 4. It's the wrong figure. The elevations on the plan, to me, I'm not sure they match up with what's existing on the topo, and why that's significant, because the elevation listed on the plan, if it was consistent with the topo, then you could say, okay, it was just the wrong number. But now I'm not so sure, because it's off by about a half a foot. So it's actually off by exactly a half a foot. So I'm not sure if the translation resulted in wrong elevations being listed on the plan, which would result in either more compensation needing to be provided or not. But considering that this is a considerably flat site and that this area is a significant area, and some of the people in this room actually are in here perhaps for this particular project, that needs to be looked at, and the figures need to be run. The second thing too, and I suppose this is, has the city engineer had a chance to review this, especially with respect to the I-beams? What's the usable life of these things? I mean, are we going to be looking at someone coming back in 20 years saying my I-beams are rusting out and I need to put in a foundation, or my house is going to cave in? I mean, I don't know what the that's not necessarily our issue, but it can become our issue. So I would like to see some sort of information on that.
Yep, not a problem. We can do that. We will submit copies to the city engineer.
And lastly, as was addressed, I don't believe you were here at the last meeting that this was discussed, or perhaps you were. I don't know, but underground storage is not allowed under the regulations. So,
it has been used in the past, and I think DEP will go because it's such a small amount. But I have an email into DEP. I've contacted them to verify that. But I expect that you would want some time to review the plan. We realize that this is at the last minute, so that's not a problem. We haven't gotten a review from DEP either, so, you know, we expect all of that to be resolved by the next hearing.
Now, with respect to the plan itself, your calculations, your flood storage, now I know you didn't prepare this, but your flood storage and compensatory values, the stuff listed under compensatory or restored volume, I don't understand what that means. I don't understand the nomenclature that he has listed there. He's got A equals, and then A equals 369 cubic feet, and A equals 13.7 cubic yards. Now, I know that translates into one another, but I don't know at what elevations those are at, and typically
we'll
when
give you
we
a
see
written
our
narrative that goes with this. That's not a problem.
yeah, typically when we see our cuts and fills, we see our cuts at elevation, and we see, you know, the fills with the, you know, the appropriate or more cuts at the same elevation. So I don't know I know you've got this Cultec thing, but you also have some grading cuts that are done, and I don't know what else, you know, between 94 and 96, but I don't know where those fall on this particular chart, so.
Yeah, the grading cuts are for the lower levels, but we'll give you a written narrative that explains that in more detail.
Yeah, well, you say the grading cuts are at the lower elevations, but you've got cuts at between 94 and 95, and then 95 and 96, and 96, there's a very slight cut above 96, but then I go in your contour interval computation of storage volume compensation, and there's no cuts listed at those elevations. So I don't know. You know, again, the what's shown graphically isn't consistent with what's shown mathematically. So
For my review, I believe it works out, but we'll give you a written narrative that explains it so that it's clearer.
yeah.
Not
I
a
don't know
problem.
if there's any other commission. I know, you know, as I said, procedurally wise, this is going to be, I would imagine, going to be continued because the commission needs, you know, we need time to be able to do a full review and of the plan. So I don't know if there's any questions from Commissioner Varnum.
I haven't had a chance to review this in paper form that I could read at all, but just looking at the center here, what is this Cultec? Is that a roof drain?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. Infiltration for the roof. It's a plastic unit. It's like a domed structure that goes underground. The roof drains go into it and provides infiltration of the roof runoff. That's clean runoff coming from the roof, and it infiltrates directly into the ground.
So it has openings at the bottom?
Yes.
Somehow? Now, what happens if the ground is already saturated?
It won't work. These are designed under the stormwater management regulations for the half-inch rainfall event. Turns out 95% of our rainfall events are a half-inch or less. And that is what the infiltration is designed for. It's not designed to take in the runoff for a 100-year event or any of the larger events. But it complies with the state stormwater management regulations.
I have any more questions at this time? Thank you.
Commissioner Moore? Commissioner Lynch? Commissioner Biedron? All right, so, I mean, just for the sake of not coming back multiple times, if there's anyone here who would like to offer their comments or concerns regarding this, and you're not going to be held to not being able to speak in the future, provided new information is provided. But at this point in time, just based on the very brand-new plan, I can't imagine anyone's even had a chance to look at this other than just the applicant and the commission members. So if anyone would like to offer their comments or concerns, you're more than welcome to at this time. All right. Yeah.
I'll move to continue this case, this submittal until the next regularly scheduled meeting. Is that 2 weeks enough?
Mr. Erickson, is 2 weeks
Erickson?
sufficient? Yes. It's, all right. I have a motion to continue at the request of the applicant. Do I have a second? Second by, who made that? Commissioner Bedrin. Okay, any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it, okay. Moving on to other business. Did we miss the enforcement order on the agenda? I'm not seeing it.
This is part of the other business.
You going to discuss that? You
yeah,
want to discuss that?
You can take
Okay.
it now, or you can take it after the.
I'll
working
take it
meetings.
now, because there's a lot of folks here that may not necessarily be interested in the, in the ordinance change, but, in the draft change, but I'll take that as part of the thing. We have on June 7th, an enforcement order issued on Townsend Avenue, on the Townsend Avenue project, 48 Townsend Avenue and 800.1 Varnum Ave and 810 Varnum Avenue, to cease and desist, and that was the emergency certification that was issued in order to allow the temple to remove the brush piles, and since that time, from what I understand, an enforcement order and a stop work, a cease and desist has issued. So we need to discuss that for ratification, but we also have a request from the DEP to do a unified order in which they want to take over the brush pile removal and the emergency certification, or the certification for the brush pile, and assume the responsibility for overseeing and supervising that. So it's just as a procedural matter, what I'd like to do is discuss just the enforcement order as it's outstanding now. We need to ratify that. We can ratify it with conditions, or we can ratify it as is, or we can not ratify it. I mean, we have all sorts of different options. So on that, but I believe it was issued by Commissioner Varnum. So I'm going to open the floor to her if she wants to just explain what to the commission and the members of the public what her observations were, and that way we can. What I'd like to do is, do I have at least a motion to start the process in order to ratify this, and then we can open it up for discussion? No, I know. It would be a motion with respect to the enforcement order itself. It would be a motion to ratify the order.
So motion to ratify
The enforcement order issued
Enforcement
June
order.
7th.
June
Correct.
7th, yep.
All right, is that a motion?
Yes.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
By Commissioner Moore. All right. And, okay, now I'm going to open it up for discussion. All right, Commissioner Varnum?
I got a call and went out to the site and met Aaron Clausen there on, let's see, was that Monday? of last-
We met on the site a number of times. The day that we actually issued the enforcement order was Thursday.
Okay, June 7th, Thursday. And we walked back into the site. They had been removing debris from the 48 Townsend Ave side of the property through a staging area at 48 Townsend. We walked back onto the 800 Varnum Avenue part of the property and noticed that there was a wide swath of clearing that had not been there the day before, that was much wider than either piece of equipment that they had on the site. The debris from this new clearing had mostly already been removed from the site, and so it was pretty easy to see through there. And this clearing continued back until you get to the point where there's a small isolated wetland at the northeast corner of the cemetery that's on the property. And at that point, it stopped. And in a couple areas, it widened out to more of a circular sort of a clearing rather than just a roadway. I believe we felt that the clearing had exceeded what was necessary to get access with equipment, just due to the width of the area that had been cleared. I'm unsure whether that was successful in getting the area cleared, because the clearing stopped abruptly. So there is one side of the site that I believe still has some debris from early last summer piled up, which is inaccessible at the moment from the 48 Townsend Avenue site. So seeing as they could not reach the other debris anyway, and that they had far exceeded the width and extent of the clearing that we had in mind, Aaron and I felt that it was appropriate to issue a stop work order at that time, an enforcement order, which Aaron had with him and I signed. And at that point, I believe work was to stop at the site of any type, because the DEP also had the superseding order under review, and this superseding order also required that work be stopped at the site. The machines, I guess now have been removed from the site, but I'm not sure all work has stopped, because I did see people clearing by hand. I believe it was yesterday, clearing with hand implements, chopping shrubs and picking up debris from the ground, which I thought was probably a good thing. But the continued chopping of living vegetation, I thought, was violating the stop work order.
Do I understand that gravel was also brought on the site? Is that?
There's crushed stone of 2 different sizes that was brought on the site, not last Thursday, but previous to that. Some of it was spread in the front of the house at 48 Townsend, where the owners generally park cars, and some was spread at the back of the property near the access point for the debris removal, right at the property line. And Aaron and I were firm that we did not want any of that spread past the property line of 48 Townsend. I felt it might have been necessary to have that crushed stone there for the dumpster, for a pad for the dumpster, because the ground is just fairly soft. But I in no way intended that gravel should remain there. We don't have any indication or any written proof or of whether or not any material was removed from the site. In other words, whether this was a one-on-one, but even so, the gravel part of the operation is what was proposed in the notice of intent, which is under review by the DEP. Therefore, bringing in the gravel at this point was a violation of the superseding order of conditions process. This bringing in of gravel is part of the proposal that the proponent has made in order to have a pad for the trailer that's proposed to bring into the site. We did not discuss bringing in gravel for the staging area. I know that once you get out there, perhaps things happen and you feel you need gravel, but there was no discussion with the Conservation Commission, and we were surprised to see it there when we did go out. This was probably the first day that they began work, which I believe was a Tuesday. So the gravel is considerable. It's spread almost completely over the open area of the 48 Townsend property, the driveway areas. And the fortunate thing of it is, I believe it would be fairly easy to remove since it's so radically different from the material that was out there originally. This is brand-new crushed stone that's very white and light in color, and I'm sure that this is just a temporary violation that material can be scooped up and removed, I'm sure. But it's something that is filling the floodplain, and it's something that's of concern to us, and it's part of the violation. So the enforcement order mentioned both this fill, which is the crushed stone, which was brought to the site, and the excessive cutting of materials, the excessive clearing, even beyond what was proposed on the original notice of intent. I seem to remember, although I don't have the plan with me right here, I seem to remember a 20-foot wide pathway that was to be cut around the cemetery. It might not even have been 20 feet wide, but I believe that this clearing exceeds the square footage of that proposed pathway that was to go around the cemetery for footpath access from 48 Townsend over to the temporary temple site. It just was quite a surprise to me to see that amount of clearing and to see that it had been done so quickly. If we had been there, I think I had been there the day before, and we had talked about getting a wide enough access to get the Bobcat in there. But this is, we could put 3 Bobcats or 4 Bobcats side by side and drive through there at the moment. So it obviously was not just removing debris that had been cut last summer. It was additional clearing, which may have been proposed, some of it, but even exceeds what was proposed in my mind.
Commissioner Moore, any questions or comments at this time? No, okay. Commissioner Lynch, Commissioner Biedron.
I just have a question. So we, just to recap, we allowed them to use a Bobcat to get that stuff out of there, and if any new trees needed to be cut down or any clearing, it was supposed to be approved by us. So none of that happened, and they haven't still met the Lowell Fire Department emergency certification. They did clear without our approval and brought in gravel. Just to sum it up, that's kind of where we're at.
The gravel was contemplated under the original order of conditions that was issued and subsequently appealed, and that matter is in front of the department, the DEP, under their review now for a potential superseding order of conditions. So that was not authorized by the emergency certification that we issued. So again, that's a violation that was seen here and could be made part of a stop work, but I'm assuming that the DEP will be taking appropriate steps as far as that goes. I mean, they may permit that, they may, but again, that part of the project is not in front of us right now. So it doesn't mean that the stop work part is invalid. It's just that my understanding, at least, is that the DEP has jurisdiction over that aspect of it, and that shouldn't have been done until appropriately permitted by the DEP, but was done. From what I understand, the DEP also has a stop work order on the site.
Yeah, so what we included with your packets tonight was a letter that DEP had sent to the applicant suspending the review of the superseding order of conditions
And that was-
pending enforcement action, which
And that was dated June 7th.
Yep.
And that's pending their own enforcement action?
Their own enforcement
Okay.
action, yeah. And it's it's from discussions with DEP, it's primarily based on, our conversation about some additional clearing, but the gravel itself, and the gravel that's located in the front of the property on 48 Townsend.
Yeah, so,
Not so much the gravel that was placed to potentially support, and it's how I saw it too, as well as Commissioner Varnum, to support the dumpster as a temporary basis. Whether or not it was ever intended to be removed after that is another question. But so that we've been discussing potential enforcement options with DEP, and have been looking at ways to simplify and make the process more efficient so that it could bring the project into compliance and to remove the debris that's there as soon as possible without causing any more damage to the site, and then get back to the actual review of the superseding order of conditions, because right now that review is basically suspended.
now, the DEP suspended their review, and perhaps for two reasons. One, they also have a stop work order on the site, but secondly, we do too, and so their suspension is also based, it's a procedural reason too, because of our outstanding enforcement action.
Correct. Normally, as the commission knows well, if there is a review of the superseding order of conditions, there's a stop work order on the site entirely. There'd be nothing going on. The only reason there's anything going on, or anything allowed to be going on the site, is because of the emergency certification that was issued to remove the debris. So there was a stop work order, and anything that any work that is done outside of that, the scope of what was approved to that, is in violation of the DEP.
Right, well, right, so that's what I was just going to say. It sounds to me, from what Commissioner Varnum outlined, that the work went way beyond what was permitted under the emergency certification, and was well beyond the scope of what was permitted by that very limited emergency certification. So what the applicant is here, so Mr. Kuhn, I don't know whether you want to speak, or if you would like someone to speak on your behalf, you're certainly entitled to. All right, Mr. Erickson, if you could identify yourself for the record.
Stephen Erickson from North Environmental Services.
All right, I want to restate a concern that I had in one of the very first meetings that we had when this was before us prior on another enforcement order, that from what I'm hearing, and from what I'm hearing from Commissioner Varnum, that there was continued activity on the site even as late as yesterday or today. there's a real lack of supervision and real lack of control. This order was issued on Tuesday, I believe, and there's still people out there working on the site. Tell me why we shouldn't start issuing fines. Okay, tell me why, because
My knowledge, the only work that's being out there is picking up the brush.
you have a stop work order on the site. That means stop. It doesn't mean we're going to do what we feel we can get away with or what we can do. That means stop.
Hand removal of the brush is not illegal activity under the Wetland Protection Act or under the Lowell bylaw.
Well, that's not what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that there's further cutting going on. Commissioner Varnum and it just indicated that there was people out there doing hand working, doing further cutting. To me, that sounds like there's more work being done and more clearing being done on the site.
I don't believe that there was, but I'll check it out.
You don't believe, and I've got firsthand information from a member of the commission saying that there was. So, again, tell me why we shouldn't be considering levying fines.
The stone was put down to provide a firmer footing for the machine. It's a temporary amount of stone. 2 truckloads of topsoil will take
I'm talking
it
about the
out.
stone. I'm talking about the continued work on the site. The stone, it really isn't our issue. That's up to the DEP to make an enforcement on that.
I don't believe that any additional work was being done.
They suspended activity as far as the superseding order until such time that their own stop work order has been rectified and our stop work order has been rectified. They both issued on the same day for 2 separate and distinct reasons. Now, because of that, they've got their issue that they're dealing with respect to development or with respect to clearing on the site with respect to the original order of conditions. We are just dealing with the emergency certification and the scope of work that was permitted under the emergency certification, and that was solely to remove only a wide enough path to get in an excavator, a small excavator, in order to pick up and remove the debris piles. And from what I'm hearing, that wasn't being done, that way more clearing was being done than was permitted under the emergency certification. Because of that, a stop work order was issued, and then that was ignored, and more work was continued to be done on the site. I'm, again, hearing that there is a complete and total lack of control over what is going on at that site. Who is responsible? And I'm really concerned, and to the point where I think this commission should seriously be considering issuing fines on a daily basis until such time that, until such time that the CKBM feels that, hey, we need to work with the city, we need to work with the authorities, we need to work with our neighbors and satisfy what the law says that we can do and what we should be doing. Not what we feel like we want to do, and perhaps we come back and say, oh, oops. No, it doesn't work like that, Mr. Erickson, and you know that. So convince me why people are out there as late as yesterday and perhaps even today still clearing on the site. After a stop, today's June 13th, yesterday was June 12th, and the stop work order was 5 days before that, on June 7th.
I'm told by my clients that there was no additional clearing done.
And, which indicates to me that your clients have absolutely no idea who is in control of that site.
While the work was going on, Mr. Walsh was responsible for the work. He took the liberty of putting the stone down to provide solid footing for the machine to provide access to the site. That material will be removed. It's not a problem, but it was necessary to get a decent footing for the machine in an area that was soft. The addition of a pathway in order to access the rear of the property was told that we can't use a public roadway that's on the property. We can't cross the cemetery with the machine, and we needed access to get to the rest of the material. So they started to make a pathway to get to the rest of the material.
Again, you've been doing this for a number of years. This isn't your first site that you've been into that you've needed to get equipment into. Having to put in gravel or having to clear a path of a certain configuration was foreseeable. And if that's the case, it should have been brought to our attention 2 weeks ago when we were hearing this, and that wasn't. This is the first time I'm hearing this, all right? I mean, this isn't the first project you've done. And if this is something that was a foreseeable and necessary activity in order to accomplish what you're doing, don't you think perhaps you should have mentioned that to us and let us consider it, and instead just going ahead and doing it and saying, oh, maybe we can get away with it, maybe we can't? I mean, to me, that's what it sounds like. All right, now, again, the gravel is not particularly our issue. It's the DEP's issue, and from what I understand, they have also issued a stop work, and they've suspended their review of the application right now until such time that they're satisfied that the site is brought back under compliance. They are also requesting to accept review of the emergency certification for the brush clearing. And again, that's a procedural thing that the commission will discuss shortly, but I want to get back to the clearing and the continued clearing that's going on the site and why this commission shouldn't be considering fines.
I'm told that there is no additional clearing going on the site. Now, I'm not there 24 hours a day, but I have been there on a regular basis. And I haven't seen additional clearing other than when the machine was there and tried to make a pathway to access the rest of the material. Because we were told we can't use a public road that transects the property, I can't cross the cemetery, and the brush is in the way, and I've got to get a machine across there to reach the material.
Are there any questions of Mr. Erickson?
Could you clarify about the public road that you're not allowed to use? Are we talking about the same road that you said
That
was a
road
paper
that
street?
transects the property is actually a public way. It was there to provide access to the cemetery. We were told not to use that road, so we didn't use that road. That road goes in front of the cemetery. It is a public way. If we could cut the trees and smooth it out, we could use that for access to get around the cemetery. Short of doing that, I have to go around the rear of the cemetery, which requires cutting brush to get the machine in there.
This is the roughly north-south road that goes through.
The road comes from Varnum Ave and runs all the way across the property, almost to the bowling alley.
Right, not the very short one coming in from the Dumoulos property, but the long stretch that you argued was a paper street back
Yes.
some time ago?
The paper street is, yeah, essentially it is a paper street. It's unfinished roadway, but it's labeled as a public way.
Okay, thank you.
And that confuses me now. What is it? Is it a paper street or a public way? Because they're not the same thing.
I thought they were pretty much the same thing. I thought a paper street was a street that was simply unfinished.
Well, a paper street is something that was approved at one point in time by a planning board as part of a plan that was never developed. A public way is a way that the public has a right of access to. A paper street could be completely private. It's not necessarily a public way.
This is an abandoned roadway. Apparently, it was usable at one time, and it may have even had a bridge over Clay Pit Brook. I don't know the entire history of it, but the surveyors tell me that this is a public way, and they refer to it as a paper street. If we're getting the nomenclature wrong, I apologize. But it is a public way, to the best of my knowledge, that anybody can use.
Okay, I'm still confused because that's not the information that was provided to us way back, but I kind of think that's getting a little bit astray of the issue.
It's a paper street. It's not a public way.
It's
a
not,
paper street.
where does this, and again, I'm confused. Why can't this way, or why can't this access be used, because it's already cleared?
You'd have to ask Ms. Farnham about that, because she told us we couldn't use it, so we didn't. I'd be happy to use it.
This is the one that goes around the cemetery, or is this the one that comes in from the Elks?
It goes around the cemetery.
What about the access way from the Elks?
Right now, there is a dispute from the Elks on using that property. We've got an attorney working on it to explain the situation that will be resolving that.
Well, that complicates things.
It does complicate things.
All right, but again, the emergency certification was issued with the understanding that that access way was usable. And if that access way is now in dispute, to me, it seems like it would have been prudent for the applicant to come back before us and say, hey, we can't use this way. We need access from another part of the site, instead of just going ahead and doing what you want to do.
The access from the Elks was discussed with the Elks in the past, and...
Not the Elks, we're the Lowell Conservation
Right,
Commission.
but we have legal rights to that. We simply need the attorneys to explain that to the Elks, that
Yep.
we have the legal right to use this.
Okay, but right now, you're not using that, and so you decided to clear another pathway in order to get access to the site. Again, that wasn't contemplated under the emergency certification. What was contemplated was that there would be limited access from the 48 Townsend Avenue site, and there'd be limited access from the Elks right-of-way.
That was our hope, but
Yeah,
it
well, I
didn't work
understand
way.
that. That was what was discussed, and that's what was permitted as part of the emergency certification. But now I'm hearing that that has changed, that the access way over the, whether or not it's a valid right-of-way or not, over the Elks is currently in dispute, and you're not using that for the time being. But that doesn't mean that you can just create another access way. That means that you got to let us know and say, hey, we have a difficulty here, and we need other access way in order to accomplish what was ordered of us in the emergency certification.
Well, we probably should have called you and discussed that.
Probably, come on, Mr. Erickson, you know better than that. You should have.
Sure.
All right. Is there anyone else who would like to offer their, just briefly, please, because we're going to be coming back. If this is in general, we're going to be coming back to this. I just want to limit this particularly just to the emergency certification and the ratification of the emergency certification.
Good morning, good afternoon, Commissioner. My name is Maya. I have a residence at 108 Hastings, Lowell, Massachusetts. I'm coming up here to let everybody know that Commissioner Vanum said that yesterday and today people is clearing. It's not true. I was there after we received since last Friday. I was at the temple almost every day. And I told my people not to touch. But yesterday, I saw the woman with a camera go around, and I walk around the place every day because I want to know. You know, sometimes we don't speak, we don't say, people step on us. And it is not fair for our people. You know, we walk around and we pick up some of the wine that pull from the ground, and we are afraid that people walk and fall down and hit with that. So we pick a few of it. It's not cutting, it's already stick up, you know, from the ground. And we saw the woman with a camera, and we tried to get her, but she's escaped.
Stop.
Yes.
You understood that. Stop means stop.
Okay.
Okay, you can continue, but what I'm trying to drive a point home. And when enforcement order issues, when a stop work order issues, that means you stop. Okay. Nothing happens until it's resolved. You don't keep continuing to do stuff that you might think is okay. It stops. I'm sorry for interrupting you. I just wanted to illustrate a point and what a stop work order means. It means you cease.
Okay.
Any work on the site, it stops.
Okay. So I'm clear with that. And we have people walking around the site, not cutting the tree or brush or cleaning up. But we have people come to visit, walk around. We do have people coming every day. I just want to inform you that, we are, just want to inform that we have people visit around the site. So thank you.
I'm Ed Walsh, 297 Pawtucket Boulevard in Lowell. I was in charge of supervising the job over on Townsend Avenue and so forth. Our real intent, which we showed the commissioners when they came over there, and Aaron Clausen, that we were going to come in and remove some of the debris from the Elks easement, that 20-foot easement that comes through from the Elks. There's a little misunderstanding between, it's been on there since 1900, that easement from Old Ferry Road in. We thought we were going to cut, we flagged the trees, and that's how we were going to go in and remove all the debris that's over on the backside where the temporary temple was. The Elks was upset about having the machine, so I moved it right away. Took it off there, and we moved over to Townsend Avenue. That was our other access to go into the property. So we had about a 4-foot earthen berm with some rocks in it and so forth. So we removed that. Every load we took out 2 loads, and we replaced it with stone, some across. So good construction practice is not to have any, if you're hauling out of anything, you generally put stone down, and you don't drag the mud over the existing streets. So we did that. I did that. I did that on my own, which is good construction practice. So we turned around and removed all the trees that were in around the left side, all that vines and everything that was windrowed all the way along. And then we didn't want to go onto the 16.5 pathway going out to Varnum Avenue, going by the cemetery, because Miss Varnum suggested we don't go on it, so I said, fine. We wasn't going to upset anyone. She did recommend taking the dumpster. We had a dumpster over in the ramp from between Demula's property and the cemetery. I did close that, removed it, but that was all filled by hand. They picked up everything around there, so I took it out of there. I got it out the probably following day when the truck came in. So we removed we had a lot of slash that was in there, and it was all tangled up. Those trees have been down there for 10 or 15 years. They're all dead, but you wondered why there was wider? It's just trying to get that to maneuver in there to take out the dead trees was a big job. So all we had to do, someone said there were saws running. We had to cut them off so that we wouldn't drag the whole tree out. But all the slash was lying down, and that's something that's burning right now out in Colorado, all those big old trees that's been down there for years, and that's what causes a big problem in the neighborhood. So when I stopped, when Miss Varnum came in and Aaron asked me to stop, I did right that day, and we moved the machines out the following day. Is that correct?
I'm not aware of when the machines were moved out.
Well, we removed them when they had the trailer available, but when Aaron and yourself was there and you asked me to stop, we stopped immediately. So, but I don't, if someone's been walking on the property, I don't know, but it was nothing any to do with moving debris. So.
Mr. Walsh, just a second. Did I understand that right? You removed 2 dump trucks full of dirt?
Well, yes, to get through that berm that was right on the property line.
What about on the 48 Townsend Ave site? How much?
That's on, well, it's between the 48 Townsend site and the,
And the,
it's a property.
oh, that's the berm you were talking about.
That's a big earthen berm with rocks and
Right,
so
yeah,
forth.
okay.
It's on
With
the property.
And there was
line.
boulders there too?
Right.
Yeah. And you took out 2 dump truck fulls, you said?
Took out 2 drop with, and we replaced it with 2 loads of stone. So we didn't increase any filling. And I think I told Aaron that at the time, and I told him I'd get him the tonnage slips. They were supposed to send the tonnage slips down to Aaron's office, but I don't know if they arrived. But we do have the tonnage slips to, and it was 2 loads.
You could provide those.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Walsh? All right. Thank you.
My name is John Hamblett, 495 Varnum Avenue, representing the Pawtucketville Citizens Council. I just wanted to give the enforcement order some perspective. I have assembled a listing of the 34 known violations that have occurred over the past 10 months at this site. 20 of those violations are conservation related. I will hand out this listing in a minute. The current violations for which the CKBM have been cited in the enforcement order for are not isolated incidents. This listing is to prove the violations are serial, willful, and intentional. Given the experience level and the seniority of the CKBM board officers and their advisors, including a former director of Lowell's DPW and a former Lowell ZBA chair and city councilor, the repeated and complete disregard for the law is unacceptable. Add in the increased risk to the lives and to the property of our neighbors, and their actions are simply unconscionable. Not only do we request that the enforcement order be ratified, but we would hope that the maximum fine of $300 a day per violation be applied. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Thank you. Is there any?
I don't have the emergency certification in front of me, but I can tell you this. There was one part of that emergency certification.
Ms. Forgione, if you could identify yourself for the record, please.
Deb Forgione, thank you, Townsend Avenue. You gave them permission to remove the berm on the Elks side, and they in turn moved berm on the Townsend end side. So that, to me, is a violation of the emergency certification. The second thing is you allowed a bobcat, and they delivered an excavator. And it was the neighbors who took a picture of the excavator to show that it had gotten delivered. We don't know how it ended up from the Elks to Townsend Avenue, and maybe Aaron can weigh in on that. I have no idea. But the Elks wanted the excavator off the property because they didn't have permission. Okay, so now we have an excavator at the property that you said couldn't be there and ends up on Townsend Avenue, which you said it couldn't be there. Once it's on Townsend Avenue, Aaron can attest that that excavator was used at the site, whether it was to remove the berm. That's a confirmation from Aaron. So now in the emergency certification, you have an excavator that wasn't allowed. The excavator was used. You have Aaron saying that he knows that it was used there. So that's, I think, the third one. The one that cannot be confirmed is 58 Townsend Avenue at 2:30 in the morning last Monday, saw and heard the truck behind their house, which was building the road that they're talking about that they had to cut to the wetlands. And how they did it was with lights.
Is this your observation, or is this?
I said it couldn't be proved. It's the 58 Townsend Ave neighbor who saw it at 2:30 in the morning
I
out
would
the
invite
window.
them to come in and tell us, but and again, we're not bound by the rules of evidence, but that's kind of out there as far as hearsay goes.
Well,
And
it
I'd
does
rather have
sound
the
out
person
there.
who made the observation come in and tell us that.
Then, you know something, all right, keep that in mind, and we can do that, because now I think so if you scratch that one, we still got 3. You allowed them to do 2 dumpsters and 2 staging areas, and what they did was they had a dump truck that they said was gonna be used as a movable dumpster. So when you see the movable dumpster on the property, when he was saying that they took dirt out and put it in the dumpster, I don't know how that much dirt how could you get that much dirt into the dumpster, which would be the excavator? All right, so then obviously the excavator can't prove it, but the common sense would say the Bobcat didn't put it into the dump truck. What we do have, and we gave pictures to Aaron, is that someone took a picture of the dumpster, movable dumpster, that was actually the dump truck in the upright position dumping it down. So they were dumping in. So again, now we have the dumpster, let's see, movable dumpster, an excavator, a Bobcat, and let's see, I think that was it. So it's more than just, if you're going by the emergency certification, that's what you allowed them to do, and those were the violations that we all observed. So, and it is just confirming there's nobody more experienced than Ed Walsh that would know how to do that site correctly. And he's been in a position with the city that he's been in a position where he would expect people to do permission. When he oversaw the city, people would have to come to him for permission. So he knows where the permission was and it should have been. So to me, this is not, this asking for forgiveness after what has just transpired over this last week. I really think you should consider fines. Thank you.
Are there any?
I have a question. After we sat here last meeting and discussed the size of the equipment and what was to be used, and I think we were very straightforward with that, why was it determined to use a bigger piece of equipment then without coming here first and discussing it with us?
If I may, Commissioner Lynch, too, as an aside, there was a mini excavator, half-track with a thumb, doing the work along the River Road in Tewksbury, the repaving and telephone pole and sidewalk relocation project that the town of Tewksbury is doing in between Lowell and Andover in North Tewksbury. And it was about a third of the size of the one that you had out there, and I was looking at that saying that's exactly the type of thing that this commission contemplated. It was probably just slightly larger than a Bobcat. It was probably 50% again larger than a Bobcat. Half track, had the thumb on the back side of it, and had a boom and everything. And it looked to me more than adequate to move the brush piles that I observed when we did the site visit, a month or two ago. So, unfortunately, it's not out there anymore. It was only out there for a day or two because whatever it needed to get done, it got done relatively quickly. So, whether it was too small to do it, I mean, that's a whole, there's a couple of miles on River Road that they're doing out there. So, whatever it needed to do, it got done. It got done in short order. And how do I know that? I drive that road every single morning. All right. And so I've seen the project, and I've seen the progress on that project for the last couple of years. But just over recently, it was just a couple of days after the emergency certification was issued that I saw this, and I couldn't even pronounce the name of the vehicle. It was Korean or Chinese or something like that, but it had about 11 or 12 letters, and most of them were consonants, so I couldn't even begin to pronounce it. I should have stopped and taken a picture of it, but I didn't. So I know that these smaller sized, thumbed excavators, half-tracks exist. And I believe our commission, I believe our administrators provided you with information about those too, so.
The machine we wanted to use was what our contractor had, and it was available to us at a favorable rate. It's the correct machine to use for the job. The work would have been done in a very, very short period of time. We would have been out of there by now. Instead, we're using a smaller machine. It's not our choice, but we are using a smaller machine because the commission requested it. It makes more trips, it takes more time, it costs more money, and it doesn't do as good a job. So the reason to your answer to your question of why we had the big machine is because it's the appropriate machine for the job.
But we didn't approve that. We approved the smaller piece of equipment at the last meeting, and you basically just said, forget it, we're gonna use whatever we wanna use?
No, we used a smaller piece of equipment on the site. We used the larger machine to load the dumpsters from Townsend Road.
Okay, well, I'm reading something here that says it was used to remove soil. So which one's correct? It was either used to remove soil or it wasn't. I don't understand how it can be
The larger machine
confused.
was used to take the soil out to give us a firm area for the footings. That was appropriate. It was right on the edge of Townsend Avenue, on the property on Townsend Avenue. And if we'd used the larger machine to clear up the rest of the stuff, everything would have been cleared by now.
And I don't disagree with that, but I think that if you were bringing a bigger piece of equipment in, you should have came to, even if it wasn't gonna be used for the intended purpose of what we had discussed, I think it would have been a courtesy just to say, hey, we're bringing a bigger piece of equipment so that people aren't wondering what you're doing with it.
Good evening. My name is Samkhan Kearns. I live in Lowell, and regarding to your question, the big machine, we do have a meeting. We did have a meeting on Monday morning at 8 o'clock Monday morning on the side with Greg Thomas, regarding the use of the machine, that particular machine that you mentioned. And he said he okay, for us to use that to pick up, the debris and just to put into the dumpster. And we did exactly just that. So yes, we did, we asked for the approval, and it was okay. So that's why we went ahead and did the job and used the smaller machine to pick up, all of that tree.
Okay, well, I guess that needs to be communicated with us then, because I don't think I saw anything about that from Mr. Thomas. So again, I apologize for that, but it's just something that we should know, because again, people can see this and they're gonna ask questions, and then we get the questions back. So I mean, it's good that you went to him and asked and discussed that with him, but I don't know if anybody else on the commission was aware of this, but I certainly wasn't, so.
The confusion and our understanding is that, we have so many people that we listen to, and we try our very best to comply, with your order, and everything that we are trying to do is again, and, we ask again and again for give us the advice, tell us what to do, and all that kind of stuff. We did exactly that. At the end, we still, get nailed for what? I mean, we did ask for permission. And on Monday mornings, before we start the work on Tuesday, Mr. Amboise, Ms. Maya, Honorable Salcon, and I, was there. And we said, before we do, is there anything that we need to be mindful of, we need to be aware of? And we did just that. Now, in terms of the cutting, when we received the order to cease and desist, we did exactly that. We did not do any more cutting. Today was raining. There's no way we can do any cutting. Yesterday there was no one there, to do any cutting. What Ms. Maya was saying that the people walk over the property, but they did not constitute or did not justify that people are cutting or clearing any more thing. So to accuse us of again and again violating your orders, it just makes no sense. It makes no sense. And I hate to say that we have to defend that. We are not doing that. We respect that. And there's people in charge of that. People are there every day. The Hmong are there every day. There's no more cutting whatsoever as of June the 7th.
Approximately how much more brush needs to be removed as a percentage of what was out there? How much have you finished, and what still needs to be cleared from the site?
About 50%. And
You're about halfway done?
And for your information, we are willing to send all these, young men and women who are here, 67 years old, to go and physically pick up all those rocks in the bridge. If that satisfies you, and we're not going to use any equipment whatsoever with us, but we're going to use all these people to go out there and clean up physically by hand. If that would satisfy, your order and that of the state and the local.
Yeah, all right.
We mean it.
How this proceeds from here, there's procedurally wise, as an enforcement order has issued, and the law requires that the commission review the original enforcement order and either ratify it, not ratify it, or modify it with conditions. We have the ability to do any one of those things. We also have a request from the Department of Environmental Protection, the Mass DEP, to, as part of this particular work, not necessarily as part of the enforcement order as is outstanding now, but as part of the original emergency certification, to rescind the original emergency certification and allow the DEP to assume responsibility under a unilateral administrative order. And what that in essence would do is concentrate control over the site and responsibility for supervision or administrative supervision to the DEP and not to the Lowell Conservation Commission. The emergency certification ended up in front of us. It's sort of a procedural anomaly. It came before us after the original order of conditions was appealed to the DEP. Typically, in a situation like that, the local authority, in this particular case, the Lowell Conservation Commission, our responsibility for the site as far as any further work on that site in contemplation of what was ordered and appealed is terminated. I mean, we're done with it. We can participate in the administrative appeal process, but we don't have to. We certainly have a right to participate in it, but again, it's not something that the law requires us to do. However, if observations are made, or if the law allows for, in certain circumstances, emergency orders to issue based on something new that happens. In this particular case, it was a fire department. It was the Lowell Fire Department issuing an emergency order to remove the brush piles because it was a hazard. It was a fire hazard. I guess that's been there has been since communication with the fire department, and they are either willing to extend the date of their, and we've already come and gone as far as their original date of May 31st, I believe, or May 30th. We've already passed that date, but based on the weather that we've had recently, at least the wet weather, the exigency of the fire hazard at least has abated somewhat. It's diminished. So from what I understand, at least that there has been communication between the DPD and the fire department that at least the timing of it is relaxed. Now, with that in mind, it perhaps may be prudent, and as part of the ratification process, I think the commission should also take up whether or not, and discuss whether or not we should entertain the DEP's request based on a letter from Rachel Freed dated where is it? Do I have it? Or was that just a communication from Rachel? That was just email communications through DEP.
Yeah, it's been more of a discussion that's been ongoing since the emergency certification was issued. Since we started trying to oversee the process, beginning with the delivery of the excavator and its location and its use in the gravel, and to this point, finally, the extra clearing. We've been communicating with DEP on a regular basis and discussing what it means as far as their jurisdiction, what they're supposed to be overseeing as far as the superseding order of conditions and what's allowed under that, and what we can allow or should allow under the emergency certification as issued by the Conservation Commission. During this discussion, we basically came up with the alternative that we felt worked best for the city and for the state and for the applicants, and that is to have a single entity overseeing the project rather than having multiple entities with multiple jurisdictions crisscrossing each other. That way, a single point of contact, a single message could be sent, and the enforcement of the emergency certification, getting rid of the debris could be done more quickly and expediently, and mitigate as much impact as possible, as well as moving forward with the review of the superseding order of conditions.
But that's the moving forward with the appeal on the superseding order of conditions. That's between the applicant, the appealing parties, and DEP, and to the extent that the Lowell Conservation Commission wants to remain a part of that action.
And that's exactly that's the point that we came up with. The city doesn't have any direct control of that, or the Conservation Commission.
Well, I'd like to stick with just the emergency certification itself, in the issue, and I think it's concurrent, or at least it's contemporaneous with the ratification of the enforcement order, is whether or not the commission would entertain allowing the DEP to likewise assume control under this unilateral administrative order or review the brush removal as a part of the fire department, fire department's order to remove the fire hazard. That could have been originally brought to the DEP right from the beginning. We say ab initio, but it was brought before us because it's a quicker process to do that. And the applicant brought that, I believe, that also could have been brought directly to the DEP, procedurally wise. But again, as I said, it's sort of an anomaly in the law. Since it's an emergency certification, it's a lot quicker and easier to bring it to the local authority than it is to the state authority for action. Now the DEP is aware of it, and they are requesting to assume control over that. So again, we don't have two generals. We don't have two cooks in the kitchen, basically. We have just one authority overseeing that particular and this particular phase of what's going on the property, and as a part of that, the removal of the brush piles. I, for one, as one member, think that's a prudent action, and think that the commission should entertain that. But before we, and how would that work? The way I see it is that we could ratify the enforcement order and put a condition on it And the condition, there can be more than one condition. One is we could resume, we could allow the applicant to resume work on the site, or we could say, no further work on the site, but that the enforcement order, it only remains in effect until such time that the DEP assumes control over this particular aspect. At that point in time, the enforcement order will terminate of its own, it will expire of its own, and the DEP at that point in time can assume control over the fire hazard and the removal and the remaining removal of the brush, and that can be contemporaneous with the discussion and allowance of the DEP to consolidate this. That was the word I was looking for earlier, to consolidate this this aspect of what's going on at the site, and allow them to unify the two. Even though it's one project or one site, there's two separate things going on. There's the original superseding order along with, or the appeal on that, along with that appeal and the work that was contemplated there, and then there's the emergency certification. So it would be combining the two and allowing the DEP to take control over the two separate things, and that may be, to me, as I said earlier, that makes a lot of sense. It makes it prudent. I generally don't like to lose local control over projects, but in this particular case, since it's already in front of the DEP and their agents and their field agents, they've already conducted at least one site visit, and they're aware of the ongoing activity out on the site. So having them assume total control allows this, or eliminates this bifurcated action that's going on now. So I'd like to open that up for discussion to the commission only. I'm not going to entertain I'm not going to entertain comments from because it's not a public hearing. I'm not going to entertain comments from the public as far as that goes. Thoughts and comments on whether or not we should entertain the DEP's request to unify and to assume control over the current emergency certification. What we would have to do is we would have to rescind our own emergency certification. We can keep the enforcement order in place up until such time that the DEP assumes control over it, and then we can put a condition on it that it expires of its own act, and so at that point in time we don't have to come back and act and actually rescind the enforcement order itself or revoke the enforcement order itself. So Commissioner Bynum, I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Well, in most cases, I would say, as you'd mentioned, that local control is probably the better way to go. And as you also said, its response time is the difference. We have had a visit from DEP. They've been here once, but in the span since they've been here, we have had 2 or 3 site visits out there due to changes in what was going on the site, or perceived violations of what the orders had allowed. I'm comfortable with the DEP reviewing the order as far as the appeal goes, but should another, and maybe this is a question for the lawyers among us, should other violations occur, if we were to give over complete control of the site to the DEP, does that mean that the Lowell Conservation Commission would be unable to issue, say, an emergency enforcement order should one appear to be necessary on a short-term basis.
My understanding is that any perceived work on any site, not just this particular site, but any site that's observed in violation of the Wetlands Protection Act or the local ordinance would be, the Conservation Commission would be allowed to issue an enforcement order. And again, it's a procedural issue. What happens, the state authority, in this case, the DEP, is reviewing the project. They can potentially issue a superseding order of conditions, you know, or they can actually deny they can actually deny basically a reversal of our original order of conditions. They can ratify our order of conditions, or they can completely do their own thing and rewrite the entire project. But my understanding of the Wetlands Protection Act, and perhaps Aaron can correct me if I'm wrong, is that if the members of the Conservation Commission, or it's brought to the attention of the administrators or the members of the Conservation Commission that there's a continuing violation or that there's a new violation on the site, we still always retain the authority to issue an enforcement action. And at that point in time, that gets communicated to the DEP, and the DEP will, it's a procedural thing with them. They suspend, they issue a cease and desist order until such time that is reviewed, and to their satisfaction, it's either the enforcement order was not warranted or was warranted, and then they take action on the enforcement order as was issued by the local authority. It doesn't continue on with the local authority. It's brought to the attention of the DEP, and the DEP at that point in time is required to take action based on the local enforcement order. That's my understanding, and I'm not the lawyer for the Conservation Commission, so I could be misstating that. But
I have a very similar understanding. But basically, what they are going to be doing if the commission decides to rescind the emergency certification through the unilateral administrative order is issue a cease and desist for any work on the site. Then they're going to set up a site meeting shortly thereafter with the applicants, and conservation commissioners are welcome to discuss what level of work needs to be done to repair what work was done on the site. You know, whether it's gravel, whether it's related to the order of conditions, the emergency certification. Give it a time, also removal of the debris. It will give a timeline for which that needs to be done. And my understanding is they can, based on that site visit, set a fine, that if those action items aren't met within a time frame, a fine will be levied to make sure that it's done. It's kind of, it's a surety bond kind of approach. Any additional work, say separate work that was done on the site, say it's done on the very north end of the site near Varnum Ave, if the information comes through to the city or to a commissioner, we would funnel that through DEP, as they have enforcement action on that entire property once they put the cease and desist order on.
no, I understand that, but I believe Commissioner Varnum's concern was by allowing the DEP to assume, and again, it was just a general question, I think, with respect to local control or state control of the site. I believe the question was if it's observed that there's a new violation, does that remove the Conservation Commission authority to issue an enforcement order, or is there an obligation at that point in time that said violation be communicated directly to the DEP, and no enforcement order can issue until such time that the DEP takes action on it? My understanding is once the DEP, a cease and desist order is pretty clear, but assuming at some point in time the DEP issues an administrative order with respect to continued work on the site and work progresses, but then it comes to our attention that on a Wednesday afternoon, for instance, 4:30 in the afternoon, that work is being done that's beyond the scope of what was permitted by the DEP, does the local authority at that point in time possess the authority to take the 5-minute drive out there, issue a cease and desist order based on an observed violation at that point in time? Or does that have to be communicated to the DEP, which, everyone's gone home for the evening, and, no one's going to be out there until the following day. It's now a weekend, and no one's going to be out there till the following Monday. But, or I should say, a Friday afternoon. My understanding is that the local Conservation Commission in that particular case always retains the authority to issue further cease and desist orders and further enforcement orders on the site. And at that point in time, what that does is, as far as the DEP is concerned, is that they are required at that point in time to issue an administrative. It's an automatic thing. That the DEP issues a concurrent, so to speak, until such time that the DEP has a chance to review the perceived or the alleged violation and take action on it. I believe that was Commissioner Varnum's request, that by rescinding the emergency certification, are we totally abdicating our oversight and observations to the DEP as far as any
No.
work going forward?
Yeah.
And my understanding was we always retain the right to observe and take appropriate action or appropriate steps to any alleged, because we'll be privy and we will be a part of receiving. The DEP is required to send back to the Lowell Conservation Commission any superseding order or any order with respect to what was appealed and any further action that they take. And I believe that's done because we're basically their eyes in the field at that point in time. So I believe the Lowell Conservation Commission always retains the authority and the right to take further action. And again, not just this site, any site. So I don't know if that answers your question.
I would be concerned if the Lowell Conservation Commission were not able to have input at the point that we would give over control of the site. But I think what I would be looking for is the ability to input and be a party to what the DEP is trying to do out there.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
that's my understanding.
we are as just by matter of law as part of the appeal. So,
Yep.
Commissioner Moore, any questions or comments on what we're talking about, Commissioner Lynch,
No, I agree with what
Commissioner Beedron?
Barnum said. I think we made it very clear that if there was any clearing that was going to be done, that it had to be approved by us. I think we made it very clear that you had to use a bobcat, and none of this really was abided by us. And if there has been extra clearing done, I think that is a complete lack of respect for this commission. I think that, maybe not right now, but if there is any more violations, we should severely consider daily fines.
All right. What I'd like to do, I'm not taking any comments on this aspect, because this is something that the Lowell Conservation Commission issued, and it's a procedural move. Should we choose to do this? We currently on the table, we have the ratification of the enforcement order, and I think we can take that up last, because that will, I think, tie in with the discussion that we're having with respect to allowing the DEP to take control over the enforcement or the emergency certification. That would, I guess, procedurally, how we proceed on that is we would rescind our own emergency certification. And with the understanding that right now there's a current stop work order, both statewide, but we don't have any control over that. But local, we have one now that's here for ratification, so we can discuss how we want to condition that or whether we want to continue that. But I think right now we should see if we can proceed. Do we want to rescind our emergency certification and send it along to the DEP for their unified control over this, or do we want to keep local control over it? And so, I think we need to proceed by motion as far as that goes, and I suppose we could do perhaps a motion to rescind the emergency certification and to open that up. We've already had a substantial discussion, but we can just clarify exactly what that means if that need be. So
I move to rescind the emergency certification at the point at which the DEP would take control of the removal of debris that was required under the emergency certification.
all right, do I have and that's as part of the Lowell Fire Department's original hazard removal order, right? Okay. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
By Commissioner Lynch. All right, now open for discussion. So we understand. Does anyone have any further questions on that? We've sort of already discussed it.
I guess, is it still gray? Like, are we sure that we will have control? You guys definitely know that for sure, what you guys were discussing.
Well, no, what this will do is this will send they're already halfway through the brush removal process. This will send the remainder of that, because right now there's a cease and desist order, both statewide, both on the state level and locally. So no further work can happen until such time that, if we approve this, until such time that the DEP takes control over it and makes an order based on the removal of what's left, pursuant to the Lowell Fire Department's hazard order.
So let's say, for example, more clearing is done over the weekend.
They can't.
What happens?
They can't. There's a cease
But what
and
if it
desist.
is?
Well, we can issue another stop work order, and at that point in time, I mean, I think all the principles are here. And I think people understand that stop means stop. That's what I was trying to drive home. Nothing should be happening out there. There shouldn't be anything going on that would give people, cause to believe that work is going on the site towards what has been permitted, because what has been permitted right now is stopped. The DEP has issued a cease and desist, and the Lowell Conservation Commission has issued, that's up for discussion, but right now there is a current enforcement order on the site. What happens in the next 10 minutes or so is we can discuss that as part of the motion that's on the
The fact
table.
that it even got this far, I thought last meeting was the stop.
Right.
This meeting's the big boy stop. It's
Right,
like
well,
next
I
needs
mean,
to.
and I just want to clarify too, I mean, the DEP could come back and say, yeah, you need to, you can use a bigger excavator and you can clear more on the site. I mean, they certainly can do that.
Yeah.
That by handing over that part of it to the DEP allows them to make appropriate orders. It may not be something that was particularly palatable to us originally. But again, so you keep that in the back of your mind. That's what that means. It means that the DEP assumes the responsibility for issuing how the remainder of the brush piles, in order to comply with the Lowell Fire Department's order, may be removed. So, I want to make that clear so that there's no misunderstanding there. The DEP will be the conditioning authority as far as the remainder of the brush piles go. So we have a motion to rescind the emergency certification that was second. Is there any further discussion on that? All right, and I'll call it one by one. All in favor signify by saying yea or nay. Commissioner Varnum?
I'm actually voting against my motion.
Okay. Chair is yes. Commissioner Moore? Commissioner Lynch?
Yes. I'm saying nay.
And that's a
No.
no? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so it's 3, 4, and 2 against. And so the motion to rescind carries. Now, now we have the enforcement order that's on the table, and there was a motion to ratify the enforcement order. Now, there's a current cease and desist that needs to be ratified. Now, we can ratify that in its entirety, which just basically means it cease and desist, but based on the fact that we've now rescinded the emergency certification in order to allow the DEP to unify that, under their current action going forward, to me, it makes sense that we would ratify the cease and desist order and keep that in place until such time that the DEP takes control or takes formal control over this and chooses to issue an order. So, but the other options too is we can choose not to ratify it, in which case it just dies. But I don't know what happens. There's still a cease and desist on the statewide, so nothing would be allowed to go on the site anyway. The other option, I suppose, would be that we can ratify the order but add conditions to it. We could allow further work to go, but that doesn't make a lot of sense in light of the fact that we've rescinded our own emergency certification. What I think makes the most sense is that we continue with the enforcement order until such time that the DEP assumes formal control in issues thing, and at that point in time, the order can just self-terminate. So again, it's been seconded, so I'll open it up for discussion and any thoughts. And again, I'm not opening this up to the public. This is just the commission. Commissioner Varnum?
I think ratifying it just makes a clearer record for the file. And then if the DEP takes over, that would just be part of our file.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Commissioner Moore?
I agree. I'd like to see it ratified and then allow DEP to step in.
All right, Commissioner Lynch?
Same feeling.
All right, Commissioner Biedron? All right, so with no further discussion, all in favor of the motion to ratify the existing enforcement order with no change, and I'm assuming, and can I just have a motion then to modify it that the enforcement order stay in place until such time that the DEP assumes formal control over this? If someone could make just a motion to modify the original motion.
Move to modify the original motion such that it terminates once DEP takes control.
All right. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of just the modification, signify by saying aye or nay. Commissioner Varnum? Aye. Chair, yes. Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner Lynch?
Aye.
Commissioner Biedron?
Aye.
All right, so the motion to modify carries. Now on the motion itself as modified. Commissioner Varnum?
Yes.
Chair is yes. Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner Lynch?
Yes.
Okay, and Commissioner Biedron?
Yes.
All right, so the motion as modified is that the enforcement order is ratified. It's a cease and desist, stop work order. No further work is to continue on the site. As pursuant to this enforcement order, this doesn't have anything to do with the state's own cease and desist order, because that's a part of their superseding appeal process and administrative process there. This is only with respect to the existing violation that was observed. This order is to remain in effect until such time that the DEP assumes formal control over and unifies the City of Lowell Fire Department's hazard order to remove the brush piles. So as soon as the DEP takes formal control over this under a unified administrative order, at that point in time, this enforcement order will terminate of its own accord with no further action from the commission. All right, that settles that. Now, moving on the agenda, and as a part of your packages, we had some draft changes to the Lowell Wetlands Ordinance. And to read it out, draft ordinance update the commission. I'm just going to take a moment. All right, the draft wetlands ordinance update. The commission will review draft amendments to the City of Lowell local wetlands ordinance as presented and discussed at previous meetings. The commission will review draft language for the following amendments as requested. The first change was the peer review consultant fees with an increase from a per project or per issue limit of $2,500 for a peer review consultant. And why I say per issue, because some projects come before us with multiple issues. So our limit before was $2,500 per wetlands jurisdictional issue. The proposed change is to increase that to $50,000. That doesn't mean that the peer reviews will necessarily increase, but in 2012, $2,500 doesn't go very far. And we're reviewing projects sometimes, especially, a development, multiple development project, any large-scale commercial, $2,500 is a spit in the bucket, and really ties our hands as far as getting qualified and appropriate expert assistance to understand, the smaller projects are sometimes more complex, but oftentimes they're more within our common knowledge and common scope and our ability to understand. Sometimes we get these, the larger projects that really have significant impacts that go beyond, simple floodplain issues that may impact whole neighborhoods, may impact an entire city, and, the amount was dangerously low. And so it was requested that we requested our administrators, Craig Thomas and Aaron Clausen and Joe Jinowitz, to redraft the ordinance to increase that limit. Now I know the $50,000, it perhaps was picked out of a hat. I don't know. There doesn't seem to be any statewide limit, but you certainly don't want to make it unlimited. But
no, there isn't a limit or requirement limit for peer review services. This was something that I think that was put into the ordinance originally just to make sure that this tool or mechanism wasn't used for purposes other than peer review. So we wanted to keep the maximum in there, but the $50,000 is, I wouldn't call it picked right out of the hat, but we looked at the potential kinds of services that the commission might be looking for in a peer review, and one of them being actually construction project management oversight, and going out to sites and making sure that a project is happening as it should be, as being one potential service that the commission might consider. And that can be a pretty costly service. It can, particularly if it's a large project. And so we based it roughly on some of the internal services we do for the Hamilton Canal District in terms of project scoping and making sure it's being the contractor's doing what they're supposed to do. So it's not completely picked out of the hat, but it's pretty high because it's based on that project review piece. Now, if you're looking for peer review services to have a topography for a site looked at, it's probably not going to get close to this number, but it's there at least for that one service. Which
okay, so the figure was picked based on work that's been done in the city and for the city through other consultants
Yeah,
that have been retained, so there's some background or some history with respect to the figure, and I'm assuming that that's sort of a maximum amount that has been observed over historically, so.
yeah.
And not really likely to happen, but potentially could happen. Okay. And it's my understanding this, and there's a second item here too, and we'll get to that this needs to be, we need to ratify these changes and vote on these changes, but then this also needs to be approved by the city council too, because it's an ordinance change.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. It would most likely go to the city council, where they would refer to the law department.
Right,
or
yes,
solicitor's
for
office.
their review and language review, yeah. And this is also, we'll invite public comment on these changes also, so.
Correct.
The second change that's notable at this point in time is the notification in the distance from 150 feet per the assessor's list to 300, well, let me read it. Increase the written notification requirements to adjacent abutters of a project application by increasing notification to abutters within 100 feet of the project to 300 feet of the project. Was it 100 feet, or I thought it was 150 feet? Was it 100 feet? Okay, all right, so my mistake. So that will increase the assessor's list and abutters that are required to be notified by certified mail as to the project. So there are also pending, and just to answer, we've also discussed the isolated wetlands change. That is pending. We kind of wanted to, these were more of had an acute nature, and they were relatively easy changes to make, so we kind of wanted to get the ball rolling and get these through and get them in front of the law department in the city council for approval. And we're still working on the language as to the isolated wetlands. That's a little bit more complex of a language issue. I know there's been review of what other jurisdictions have done, and the language is all over the place. So we have to look at something that makes sense for Lowell and the resources that are available in Lowell. And and again, we're in a situation where we're sort of unique, where we have our canalways and our extensive wetlands that we want to give at least some recognition to those, and whether or not we give recognition specifically to the canalways, but at least the isolated wetlands as are located inside of a floodplain, whether we give particular protection to those, because we have a lot of them and they're unique somewhat in this particular area to the city of Lowell. Not a lot of our surrounding towns around us have the extensive wetlands that we have. So, and those are issues. So, are there any? There's some typographical errors that we can correct. I mean, there's that. I don't know. I had one, and Commissioner Varnum, if I could look at yours for a second. Unfortunately, I left mine. It was right towards the end. It was at the end of section 6. In the last sentence, and it wasn't one that was changed, it says the commission shall not, and I believe it should say take final action. It just says final action until such boards and officials have had 14 days from the receipt of the notice to file written comments and recommendations with the commission, which the commission shall take into account, but which shall not be binding on the commission. Perhaps that, other than inserting the word that, which was the typographical, but should we not consider changing that language, which the commission may take into account?
Yes, I think that would be the intent of that language, is that the information that you receive from these different departments and different...
Because shall has particular legal
Yeah.
It means we have to, and then it says that we don't have to. So
Right.
by just you changing that to may, I think it accomplishes the same.
That's the intent.
The same
of
purpose,
What it's
so.
supposed to be, yeah. That makes sense. We can make that change.
That was my only substantive change. My only other question, and I suppose this would be more for the law department, if they could give us an opinion as to whether or not the language, and this is I believe it goes back to section 3, which has the 50,000. Is that section? No, section 4. Whether or not, and it was the second to last paragraph, whether or not that's written in terms of the local bylaw, but should we have some language in there? Now, I know this is under the home rule part of the Wetlands Protection Act, but should we have some language in there that says that peer review, do we need to have any explicit language as a part of the ordinance that says that also applies to peer review under the Wetlands Protection Act too?
Well, that's already been adopted in the rules and
Okay,
regulations.
that's already part, and that's not part of these changes?
That's
Okay,
correct,
all right,
right.
okay, that answers my question then. Okay, thank you.
We can certainly clarify that with them, but that was the discussion we had with the solicitor's office originally when
All
that
right,
was adopted.
okay, those were my only, at this time, those are my only questions. Commissioner Varnum, I don't know if you have any. Now, I know this has been posted, so, and again, all right, Commissioner Moore? No, Commissioner Lynch, Commissioner Biedron?
Could we is there anything in here that's a little bit more stringent when people submit stuff that they can't, because I feel like every meeting we come here and we have all this stuff we haven't reviewed yet.
Well, that's actually part of our rules and regulations. That's not part of the
That's not
ordinance.
of the ordinance,
We have a
okay.
written rules and regulations that we can change at will.
Okay.
Just by motion of the commission. And
Okay.
there is a requirement, there is a 7-day submittal requirement.
And then,
So, yeah, I mean, I know sometimes we entertain issues, and
Yeah, we do a lot.
I like to at least, if we see glaring stuff, at least, so we're not coming back and starting in 2 weeks and delaying it. Sometimes we can get things moving along, but I agree with you.
Yeah, like I've never
getting
in
hit
my,
with plans an hour before, 2 hours before the hearing is just not, it shouldn't be happening, so.
yeah, and just other commissioners that I've dealt with on the other side, you can't, that Friday's by noon is it, so.
Yeah, with tonight's project on Shirley Ave, one of the reasons that even has to be entertained is because it's already, when it was continued to tonight's agenda, it's on the agenda, so some action needs to be taken on it.
Okay.
Whether or not they submit the plans in time. What the commission could do is you actually could deny the project with insufficient information based on that. I think you would have pretty strong grounds
Yeah,
to do that.
and Commissioner Bieder and I likewise have been in front of other commissions where they've actually done that.
Yeah.
And I think it's counterproductive personally, because it's, I just think it wastes a lot of people's time.
Yeah.
And again, this is just me, my preference is I would rather just continue it, but if, in looking at that plan, there was a couple of things that really stood out to me, and once I really take a look at it, there may be other things too, but there was a couple of things that I saw right at the bat that I think could have been communicated to the applicant to say, hey, listen, this is what we saw. There may be other things too, and I think Commissioner Varnum had mentioned that,
Yeah.
that there was insufficient time, but at least we can send them, home saying, hey, listen, you gotta take a better look at this thing because there are issues.
Yeah.
So, all right. Any other, at least as far as that part, any other questions? All right. If there's anyone here who would like to offer that, and I know, John, that you want to speak, so. But so I'm going to open it up. This is the part of the public comment on the wetlands ordinance update.
John Hamlet, 495 Varnum Avenue. Obviously, we're in support. We proposed it last January as far as the abutter notification and support the new increased limits for specialist fees. Do we have a sense as far as what the timing might be for the IVW, the isolated vegetative wetland, and would it be possible to package these together, go before City Council? Just makes it easier.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to take responsibility for that being carved out because I had requested of Mr. Thomas and Mr. Clausen to get these changes done, these two particular ones done ASAP. And I understand, you don't want to keep going back in front of the city council, but once it becomes an agenda item, it's just a question. These changes are relatively, they may be, going from $2,500 to $50,000 is a big change, but in the scope of things, it's really a minor change. And as I said, in this day and age, the reason being is that should have been changed years ago.
We're very
Yeah.
supportive of that, and if we get the justification that Aaron
I-
articulated before, we'll be
I
fine.
am just, I don't want to hold up the approval of these two changes pending getting that other, and I don't want to say, that's never, the isolated part isn't, because we are working on it. It is being worked on. It's just not, there's just so much to look at and to try and be specific. And I know our office is also, they're looking at it from a factual, not just a language aspect, but from a factual, what are the resources in Lowell that we're concerned about, and how can we tailor language that makes sense in Lowell? Okay, so they're looking at what exists out in the city too.
Good. I don't know if you've changed your mind on the buffer zone issue on the isolated vegetated wetlands, but we certainly would still support the idea of the buffer zone applying to the isolated vegetated wetlands.
And as far as a time frame for actual language to get in front of us, it'd probably be midway through the summer sometime would be my guess.
What might be a better approach is to provide, what staff could do is could provide the commission with a table of different types of standards based on some of our review to look at it and discuss. And then we can take from that and build language into that as a next step. So that you could, look at different examples of
This isn't a
performance
criticism.
standards.
We know how busy everybody's been. We just like to keep it on track, that's all.
Yeah.
It's very important to
Yeah,
us.
we do too.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any other comments?
Deb Forgione, Townsend Avenue. I just wanted to be able to come before you and confirm the support of the abutter notification to the 300 feet, like the zoning and the planning. And the positive thing about coming here for the last 10 months is the understanding the tools that you need to do the job that you do when we come here. So on a positive note, thank you. Thank you for listening and that's supporting it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming in. It really is truly appreciated. I wish more people would. Is there anyone else who would like to offer their comments or concerns with respect to the ordinance change? All right. Chair notes that although there's more people here, that we've had comments. At this point in time, I think what I would like to do is I would like to recommend the administrator to forward the changes and to send them along to the law department for their comment and get this back in front of us for the next meeting, at which point in time I think it may be at that point in time ripe for voting upon and to send it along to the city council. I think we do need comments because they always change stuff. So
Yeah.
I would like some comments from the law department, or could we recommend this? In the alternative, could we recommend this to go to as the minor modifications that were done to the law department, and then if there's no changes, then to the then recommend it being forwarded to the city council for action.
We probably could do that, yeah.
Okay.
I think that would be.
I don't know. I feel comfortable doing that. I think the changes are relatively minor, so.
I move to forward the proposed changes in the wetlands ordinance to the law department, and barring any further changes, that the law department then return it to DPD for delivery to the council.
And that's the proposed, that's the draft wetlands update with the minor modifications we made tonight, correct? Okay, do I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, by Commissioner Biedron, motion by Commissioner Varnum. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, or opposed, Commissioner Varnum? Chair is yes. Commissioner Moore? Commissioner Lynch?
Aye.
Commissioner Biedring?
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. So have the law department make their comments. If there's no changes, then please send those along to the city council for their approval. If, Aaron, can I be notified when that's going to be on the city council's agenda? I mean, I think at least one of us should be there. If the city council has any questions.
Yeah.
And it may, maybe that can be communicated to the PCC or the citizen. Obviously it'll be part of the agenda of the city council.
We have a distribution list that we can send it out to so people can be aware of it. I would imagine that there would be a public hearing at the city council level, at the very least, once it's amended.
I would at least like to be available to perhaps answer any questions if there are any questions, or or at least just to give a brief statement as to why we're why we think this are necessary and timely changes. So, okay.
Will do.
All right. Okay, thanks. Do we have any other business? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Just wanted
hold on.
There's the one piece about the Concord River Greenway and the
Oh.
park grant agreement that you signed,
Yeah,
Mr. Chair.
yeah.
I handed out some information.
Oh, yeah, thank you. The Rachel Kiska, and if I can, let me just talk briefly on this. A number of years ago, and I think Commissioner Varnum and myself were the only two remaining members on the commission that were a part of this original thing. The city owned some land out in the city well fields, which are at the corner of Westford Street and, Wood Street.
I'm sorry.
Coming in from Drum Hill.
Westford and Wood, correct.
In Wood, yeah, coming in from Drum Hill, and there was a project that came before us. They wanted to develop that parcel. It's a Lowell Plumbing that's right next door, or something like that. Lowell Plumbing Supply or something like that is right next door. And it was supposed to be doctors' offices. And then I think Jean Doc has a branch out there, or one of the local.
No, it was gonna
someone
be
has a branch out there.
It was a mixed use, and then it was just before the economy took a
tanked.
nosedive.
And the project went south, and it finally ultimately was developed, but as a part, the city had to sell the property to the developer, and it was conservation land. And because of that, it required an act of the Massachusetts legislature to approve that sale. But also the city is then required to use the proceeds of the sale to acquire other conservation land in the city. It has to be a one-for-one thing. So Ann Barton was a part of that project, and Jane Calvin with the Parks and Conservation Trust was a part of the parcel, and they came back with a proposal in order to develop the Concord River Greenway. And that runs from Lawrence Street and ultimately is going to come back into the downtown area. And this is part of finishing that greenway. And I don't know if you've ever been out on the Lawrence Street side, but along the Centennial Island, it goes up to about the Centennial Island area, and along all the rapids that they use in the springtime to do the boating and whatnot. But that whole initial area was developed as some of this funding that we approved. Oh boy, that has to be 10 years ago, 8 years ago or so now, Luis. I don't, it was a number of years before you guys were even here. So I think we're the only two people, and maybe Mark remembers this. I think you may have been at one of these meetings and voiced your support of it. So, so there's only 3 people in this room that were actually present as part of that, part of the initial thing. Well, it was funny because the people say there's telekinesis or what, I don't know what they call it, but I was thinking about this a couple of weeks ago, wondering what the project process was, and I get a call from Aaron about some grant money that the city is applying for to finish this greenway, and as a result, I had a chance to talk to Rachel Kisker up in the planner's office, and the city has applied for a grant, and that, I'll turn the table over to you, Aaron, if you could.
Well, I can give you-
And I know Rachel wants to come in front of us and
Yeah.
and give us more detailed, but she couldn't be here tonight.
Yeah,
so.
at some point, Rachel had expressed interest to provide the commission with a more in-depth update. But basically, we've actually received the grant. It's a $500,000 park grant from the state to finish Phase 3A, and you can see on the map here that it's potentially 2 routes. Originally, when the Concord River Greenway was conceived, the idea was conceived, it was to cross over to Centennial Island and then back again to the east side, east bank, and continue up the Concord River. After looking at it, it looks like a potential better access route would be along the west side. It gives you better access to the river. There's some less challenge in way of challenges. There are less of them in making that connection. So what this $500,000 is doing is basically helping us build this piece out, and this is obviously the most challenging piece of the Concord River Greenway. But what the chairman was signing was basically the agreement. It's the grant agreement with the city, because the Conservation Commission is involved with the open space plan, and an open space plan with the city is a contingency or requirement of receiving a park grant. That's just kind of the administrative steps. But I know that's more of the dry aspects of this. But I did want to at least provide to you tonight this information about where it is now and what the money's for.
No, the full commission, does the full commission need to ratify the application?
It wouldn't hurt. Yeah, you could. Yeah, I think it would be a fine thing to do. There's no real need. It's just as long as the commission is aware, the body's aware
Right.
that this.
Perhaps copies could be as part of it when Rachel comes back,
Yeah.
or when she's available to talk to us. Perhaps copies can be provided as part of the packet so the commission can see that, and if we need to take a ceremonial vote in support or something like that, we can do that at that time. But
I can even upload the copy of the agreement. I don't think it was very thick. It was, I think, usually they're about this thick.
Yeah.
That wasn't that bad. I could upload it to the site if you wish to read it. But yeah, we could do that as well.
oh, good. I'm glad we already have it. So, all right. I don't know if there's any questions or anything. Okay. Do I have a motion to? Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Seconded by
Second.
Commissioner Biedron. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it.